Well, good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then we're available on demand. And we're available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple Television, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Wednesday, April 26, 2023. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ plus news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine Happening Out Television Network is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same models of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ plus community. Our mission is to support the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community: Latino, lesbian, trans, student youth, seniors, HIV/AIDS healthcare, business, political advocacy, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are part of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader community.
Well, let's welcome anchor Fay What. She is a radio and television personality and has a popular blog and YouTube channel aiming to unite the L and the G together. She's a hostess and MC for many South Florida events, an animal advocate, and owner of Fay's Fur Family. Also, make sure to catch the Fay What Show, the first LGBTQ plus morning show, Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern, online or your smart television. And Fay was the winner of the 2022 SFGN Best Local Television Personality. Welcome, Fay.
Hi, everyone, and I'm so happy to be here. This is my last day of work before my vacation, so who knows what's going to come out of my mouth for the next two shows.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Say it.
there's a joke that I can't make.
No, you cannot say. No, especially since now I'm going to welcome you, all right? Next, let's welcome John Hayden. He's a journalist for 28 years, and he now works for several outlets, including SFGN, as senior reporter and community editor, covering politics, entertainment, and local events directly impacting the LGBTQ plus community. John's interviewed everyone, from presidents to Oscar winners. This weekend, he's going to be bigger and gayer and cruisier than ever when he sets sail on the Big Gay Cruise. Yes, that's what it's called. The Big Gay Cruise. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much. I am so excited for this. I'm going on a cruise, which, as all my fans who follow me know, I do a lot. But this time I will not.
Dad?
I usually travel with my dad, but I'm not traveling with Dad this time. I'm going with my best friend. So instead of traveling with my dad, I will be the daddy.
And it.
Oh, yeah.
Smack that ass on cruise. Yeah.
You want to say something else?
I was just going to say, you're so good in big crowds.
I am.
What a shame. Wow.
Well, let's move on and welcome Daddy Kal Gajraj. Kal is a first-generation Muslim American. He is an award-winning communications executive and diversity officer for government healthcare programs. Kal is also a professor at Miami-Dade College School of Global Business and an advisory board member to the University of South Florida's College of Business. And I would say you are in the business of getting business.
What?
Getting down to business.
Oh, I'm loving this beard.
Oh, you like
Poppy.
it?
I love it. Like
Yeah,
when he
it's
called
nice
me daddy,
and-
I was like, yeah.
John,
It's getting silver, huh?
John, do I need to bring up a spray bottle?
It does make me behave.
Let's go ahead and welcome anchor Dr. Bobby Huen. Bobby is a certified civil and family mediator and the founder and principal mediator at BH Conflict Resolution Services. He helps families, businesses, and individuals resolve disputes of all types. Having grown up everywhere from Hong Kong to Boston, Bobby is proud to offer a global perspective to current events. When he is not at the office or here in It's Happening Out studio, Bobby enjoys gaming, Lego building, and hanging out on Wilton Drive. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you, Cal. And check out this hat.
So did you make that hat? Or?
Yep, got it from, actually has it custom made so that I can put it, so that I can wear it during mediation and on shows like this.
So people can know who
remember,
you are.
Yeah. I mean, I almost got one that says hostage negotiator on it also.
I love it.
Well, thank you very much, Cal. We are reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are bullet points of the queer news for today, Wednesday, April 26th.
Well, let's begin by queering up breaking news. Disney today sues DeSantis over gay government retaliation.
All right, let's get back to Julia Borson. We've got more news on Disney. Julia.
Governor Ron DeSantis is responding to Disney filing a lawsuit against him, saying the state is, and Disney's suit said the state is retaliating against the company for expressing an opinion. DeSantis' communication director just issuing a statement saying, quote, "We are unaware of any legal right that a company has to operate its own government or maintain special privileges not held by other businesses in the state." Going on to say this lawsuit is yet another unfortunate example of their hope to undermine the will of the Florida governors and operate outside the bounds of the law. Melissa, of course, this is all about the special tax district, which Disney has maintained in the state of Florida, overseeing its theme parks for quite some time now, for decades now. And this has been all battled over following the media giant saying it disapproves of some of Florida's policies, particularly the so-called Don't Say Gay bill.
All right, Julia, thank you. Julia.
Well, in this breaking news, this afternoon, the Walt Disney Company filed a lawsuit suing Governor Ron DeSantis and state officials in federal court, accusing them of engaging in a, quote, targeted campaign of government retaliation, end quote. In the feud over the Reedy Creek Improvement District, the entertainment giant filed a constitutional challenge that may go all the way to the Supreme Court over the power and limits of a Florida governor and a prospective use of that power to propel them for political gain to become president of the United States. Meanwhile, DeSantis' handpicked Tourism Oversight Board yesterday declared Disney's agreements seeking to retain control over development in Central Florida were null and void because the previous Disney-friendly Reedy Creek Improvement District Board failed to follow procedural requirements and properly notify affected property owners of the development agreements. The state legislature is expected to pass a law before the end of this session that allows the tourism board to declare all former agreements null and void. Disney said in the suit that, quote, a targeted campaign of government retaliation orchestrated at every step by Governor DeSantis as punishment for Disney's protected speech now threatens Disney's business operations, jeopardizes its economic future in the region, and violates its constitutional rights, end quote. In the federal lawsuit, Disney's lawyers say the agreements were lawfully approved and DeSantis and his allies are, quote, employing the machinery of the state in a coordinated campaign to damage Disney's ability to do business in Florida because it opposed what critics called the Don't Say Gay law, end quote. A DeSantis spokesman, Tareen Fensky, said this afternoon on the lawsuit, quote, we are unaware of any legal right that a company has to operate its own government or maintain special privileges not held by other businesses in the state. This lawsuit is yet another unfortunate example of their hope to undermine the will of the Florida voters and to operate outside the bounds of the law, end quote. Disney has set up a constitutional free speech challenge in the lawsuit by saying, quote, there is no room for disagreement about what happened here. Disney expressed its opinion on state legislation and was then punished by the state for doing so, end quote. Disney filed a lawsuit against DeSantis, the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District's Board of Supervisors, and other state officials. The suit asked the court to block the Oversight Board's actions, voiding the development agreements and a state law putting DeSantis in charge of the Reedy Creek Improvement District, which oversees government services for Disney World. It alleges the state violated Disney's First Amendment rights and clauses dealing with contracts, due process, and the taking of private property without just compensation. Disney said it wanted to avoid fighting with Florida's government, but had no choice because of, quote, a relentless campaign to weaponize government power, end quote. The lawsuit drew swift reactions from politicians and Disney analysts. Renowned Disney analyst Len Testa called Disney's decision to sue DeSantis and the state a significant escalation over matters the corporation must think are vital to its business interest. He said, quote, "This is huge. This is not your typical dispute with the local taxing authority or the city council of Anaheim. Suing a governor in federal court is unprecedented," end quote. And then former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, a GOP presidential contender, told Fox News today she would welcome Disney's, quote, hundreds of thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in her state. Well, Nikki Haley's quotation is the chop licking that we know is going on all over the country, which is why this fight makes no sense. The only thing that I think that the governor and the radical GOP that has been doing this in reaction against the gay community and Disney's support against the gay community is this idea that a company in Florida is uncontrolled and that Disney is the only one, and they're not aware of any laws or rules that created that. That is flatly wrong. In the 1960s, the governor of Florida and the state legislature created the Reedy Creek District specifically to attract Disney and Walt Disney personally to come to Florida. They created the Reedy Creek District to attract and build an unprecedented, at the time, attraction in acreage, size, and a tax base beyond anything that had ever been seen in the world, and created some autonomy independence of Reedy Creek for them to regulate the land, the services, fire and police protection, etc., etc. It operated for 54 years. And then Governor Ron DeSantis, preparing for running for president of the United States, then throws his hands in the air and saying, this is unprecedented and this doesn't exist and we're not aware of any rules, which is flatly not true, because those rules of law existed for 54 years.
And the last 3 of those years were Governor DeSantis's term. And nobody was upset about that for the first 3 years. Everybody was just fine with it. And this sets, and I'm sorry, Bobby, but just real quick, I want to say this sets a really bad example for Florida. Because obviously the thing is, Nikki Haley can salivate all she wants. Disney's not going to pick up its, 83 parks and 42 hotels and move them willy-nilly to another state. Disney's not going anywhere. But it is a deterrent to other large corporations that want to come in here. You know, the mayor down in Miami, or Miami-Dade, I can't remember, the mayor, Suarez. He wants to, make that a crypto capital of the world. But I'm just saying that, if they want to try and bring these things in here, who's going to believe them? Because everything can change from one administration to the next, even from one Republican administration to the next. I mean, my God, we've got Ron DeSantis in here making Rick Scott look reasonable and thoughtful.
And trustworthy.
It's another instance of where radical GOP operatives decided that there's free speech for me, but not for thee. right now, Florida legislature is trying to restrict how schools can approve speakers in state universities. They're trying to establish an office where they are going to force state university campuses to accept even the most heinous speakers, hate group speakers, from speaking in the name of free expression. But when a corporation uses the same right to criticize Ron DeSantis is like, you better shut up or else I'm going to take away or null and void a contract that has governed that area for 54 years. Yeah. In other words, as long as the speech aligns with Ron DeSantis, he is okay with it. But when it doesn't, apparently now we have to all shut up.
And it's so surprising that a governor, a Republican governor, who is supposed to be for big business, to go after a corporation, one of the largest corporations in the state of Florida, that generates over $75 million and pays over $1 billion in taxes, regardless.
The most LGBTQ.
The most LGBTQ plus people, and not only that, it extends to ESPN and ABC. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just Disney. It's a major global corporation. Mm-hmm. And for him to go after and attack a corporation like this is just childish on his behalf. And I really hope that it plays out that he gets embarrassed by the mouse.
But I think he picked the wrong person to go after. He picked the wrong organization to go after, right? Like, come on, as an ex-bully, you know who to go after in the schoolyard. If I saw Disney in the schoolyard with all those people, I would not be messing with Disney. You know what I mean? So kudos to Disney, okay, for putting their money where their mouth is, because honestly, mom and pop organizations don't have the funds and don't have the time to fight someone like DeSantis where Disney does.
Right.
Yeah. It's final thought relates to this point. For LGBT community, Disney, to all of the points that we made last spring of 22, Disney, come on, why aren't you there? Why aren't you there? We know in April of 2023, they're there. Yeah. They are there. They're taking this argument of don't say gay and what the governor is doing. They could have capitulated. They could have declared a peace treaty. They could have met behind closed doors and said, okay, we will quietly back away from this and you quietly back away from this. And they chose not to do that. Disney's actions today is, along with their business interests, is a stand-up for LGBT. They're especially their own LGBT employees. And if there's an Achilles heel to Governor Ron DeSantis, we probably have watched the initiation of it today. That's why this, as experts say, is a big deal. And Nikki Haley, running as a GOP, is licking her chops. Come to South Carolina. There's no chance. But her desire of saying that is an indication of how much trouble Ron DeSantis is in now. All right, so let's continue and let's queer up LGBTQ plus civil rights. Pennsylvania's LGBTQ plus rights bill, introduced 22 years ago, finally clears a House committee.
I want kids to be able to grow up in a commonwealth that values them, that doesn't discriminate against them, and is dedicated to guaranteeing them a beautiful childhood, whoever they are, however they identify, whoever they love.
Smith Waddell says that he's talking with House Republicans, hoping to get them on board. He expects this bill to pass and ultimately for Governor Shapiro to sign it.
Legislation that would extend anti-discrimination protections to LGBTQ plus people across Pennsylvania cleared a critical committee hurdle in the State House on Monday, 22 years after the bill was first introduced. The bill, which now goes to the House floor for a vote, would simply add sexual orientation and gender identity or expression to the list of protected classes under Pennsylvania's Human Relations Act. The House Judiciary Committee approved the measure on a party line vote of 12-9. The proposal inspired emotional and passionate rhetoric from supporters, while Republican members of the committee suggested it would infringe on the religious convictions and freedom of individuals and institutions and lead to unintended consequences. Following the vote, the bill's co-prime sponsors, Democratic Representative Malcolm Kenyatta and Jessica Benham, embraced its original sponsor, Representative Dan Frankel. The legislation would allow people who believe that they have been discriminated against because they are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or queer the ability to file a complaint with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. 3 Pennsylvania counties and 70 municipalities already have anti-discrimination ordinances that prohibit discrimination against LGBTQ plus people in employment, housing, or public accommodations. While the bill would only extend existing protection already granted to people based on sex, religion, or national origin to LGBTQ plus people, several Republican lawmakers introduced anti-LGBTQ plus themes to the discussion. Well, the news is, of course, good. This is an example of how, in Pennsylvania, a battleground state, elections matter. The breakdown of the 12-9 is a reflection of enough voters got out to say, we want to protect everyone, not some people. Of course, the tongue-in-cheek joke here is it only took Pennsylvania 22 years to get there.
Right, like you want to say better late than never, but damn, you know? And how awesome that the original sponsor was still working there 22 years later to still be a part of it.
We to your point, we should I make a joke about Pennsylvania, but Pennsylvania, you're not Alabama. You're not Mississippi. You're not Oklahoma. You're not Montana. You're not Idaho. Well, you're not just right.
Yeah. You know, I think, well, one, this is great. This is wonderful. And, you know, the political landscape, or at least the vote breakdown right now in Pennsylvania State House looks positive for this to make it in. Yeah. But one thing that I think we need to pay attention to, and this speaks to the divide, and you mentioned it as a positive, that it was 12-9 and that there's a big enough Democrat majority, but it also speaks to the fact that they got 0 crossover votes.
Yeah.
I mean, we think Washington is polarized, but like even the Respect for Marriage Act last year managed to lure a quarter of the Republican caucus in both houses. Yeah. Not one vote changed here. We'll see when it comes for a vote, but it's so much more deeply divided the more we get into it, the more we get into counties, the more we get into Miami-Dade School Board. I mean, every level is becoming more and more polarized, and that's, I really think, is the takeaway from this.
Just as a quick observation, I understand completely what you just said, but at least they're not the Florida legislature. You know, it's so overwhelming that we couldn't even get some crossover and it make any difference.
Decades of gerrymandering and, you know, committees self-dealing, drawing up districts that overwhelms any Democratic votes and turning all districts Republican, even with a slim majority, will do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are literally legislating us, districting us into irrelevance. Yeah.
And this is why voting matters, because we have so many more Democrats who registered to vote in this country than Republicans. And even if you get down to the states and the county level, I mean, I don't know what those numbers are, but I'm sure they're overwhelmingly, you know, Democratic voters, but they just don't go out and vote.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, we move on and we queer up SFGN. Pride Fort Lauderdale may be facing multiple existential crises. And then there was one. After months of chaos, acrimony, and resignations, it appears only one person is still officially affiliated with Pride Fort Lauderdale, and that's President Mike Martorell. In this week's SFGN, online now and on stands tomorrow, I look at how the current situation poses multiple existential threats to Pride. Whether you support Martorell and his leadership or you don't, he cannot legally run Pride by himself. Currently, Pride is in abeyance of many of its own bylaws. There's no working board of directors, and legally, they must have a minimum of 3 people. There's no treasurer, so there's no one to file taxes, keep books, and write checks. Speaking of checks, it takes 3 board members to distribute funds, the treasurer to cut the check, and then 2 other officers to sign. As of now, only Martorell as president can sign the checks, but he still needs another person. And then there are the continuing issues of transparency. The board secretary resigned in January, so there haven't been any records posted of minutes and meetings or notices of meetings since then. Even before the secretary resigned, important records were missing from their website, records that are required to be posted. I've talked with Martorell since Pride of the Americas finished, and he promised me minutes, records, and a profit loss statement from the event. Those have not materialized, and he has not responded to my calls this week. You can read my full story, which goes into very great detail, at SFGN, on stands tomorrow and online now. And there is no sign that this organization even plans to continue. The website is still promoting Pride of the Americas, and most importantly, there's no date yet for next year's event. So, usually it's like, okay, thanks for having a great weekend. We'll see you the second Saturday of February 2024. There's nothing. There's no movement. The person who designed their website and essentially updated it, he was one of the people that resigned, so it's not getting updated. But it's just so tricky now because the bylaws, and let me tell you, that's just a fun read right before you go to bed. Read the bylaws of Pride Fort Lauderdale. But the bylaws never envisioned a situation where there would be no board to start reconstituting itself. And I've talked with Martorell, and he said reconstituting the board, this was a few weeks ago, is obviously a high priority. But how do you do it? You have to have the board members. There's 3 tiers of board members. They each call for a certain amount of qualifications of having already worked with Pride. So it's like how you put Humpty Dumpty back together. I just don't know how they can do it under the current set of bylaws and just one person.
John, I've never ever really actually heard of a situation like this at a major Pride organization or festival. What's the explanation to you in terms of what happened for February and all of the financial stuff that you reported on? Where did all of that go, and what's the status of it?
I have requested the records from him. He has verbally told me he would give them to me. He has not, and he has not returned my phone call. I've tried calling him Monday and Tuesday before this story published, not like 5 minutes before you go to press and you're not there. So I've given him a chance. He usually has taken my phone calls the last couple months, so I don't know what his status is. If maybe he's out of the country, I'll give him benefit of the doubt. But the fact is, it's just nobody knows quite where to go from here. There are a lot of people that are very upset. There are a lot of people that whisper other things in my ear and leads to pursue. But I don't go on and just say, oh, I'm hearing this gossip or that gossip. This is just what it is that there's really no
board.
There's no board. There's no legal. There's no infrastructure. There's no framework of personnel to grab the bull by the horns and go forward.
Are there? Are there consequences to this? Like, is there a time frame that they need to have a certain amount of people, on board saying that they're part of this board, et cetera? And why hasn't Mike just stepped down?
That I don't know. That I do not know.
Because I just saw him at Miami Beach Pride. I mean, he is so dedicated to our community. That man has been to more prides than anybody in the world. All right. And he was there at Miami Beach Pride volunteering and getting dirty and sweaty like the rest of us were. So that his allyship is still there for our community. Right. He loves our community. He's part of our community, of course. But so many things have gone wrong. Like at this point, wouldn't it just be easier to just say, I stepped down, let's just start all over somewhere else?
Well, it would be easy, but to say that. But the fact is that he doesn't. Who's going to step in there and replace? He doesn't really want to resign. He told me he was hoping to continue on past his term in June. And these and I'm sorry, what was your question again?
What are the consequences?
Yeah, the consequences. No, they could lose their 501c3 status because part of it is to have 3 board members going forward. Any checks that he's written. Now I'm not a law. What do you call them? Lawyers. A lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but you can look at these any checks that he may have written and signed off on since the last treasurer resigned, and you may be able to go, are these checks valid? Are they allowed to make this disbursement? The federal government could come in at any time and say, you are out of compliance. We're either going to appoint a board, we're going to revoke your tax status, which would be fatal to any Pride organization.
Yeah, I was just going to ask principal organizations that were involved in this visit: Lauderdale, Midland, etc. What do you hear from the other major organizations that were involved?
Well, Midland can continue. They were in for another $100,000 each of the next 2 years. That's gone, which was essentially their biggest sponsor.
Did the people get paid back that were waiting on a check as well?
Midland is not commenting on that. So you can read into what it says. Visit Lauderdale has just completed their budgeting process for who and which organizations they're going to go, or they're going to give money to over the next fiscal year, the coming fiscal year. They're doing it internally. They're just finishing it, and they're going to announce who's getting that. But there is certainly there's a lot of side eye and a lot of hesitation before really putting the funding out there or determining how much funding is going to go on.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, John. Next, let's queer up entertainment. The LGBTQ plus community is applauding the trans moron character in Evil Dead Rise.
Mom? Mommy's with the maggots now.
What will be.
Eeny, meeny, miny. You.
From Yellow Jackets to Heartstopper, on-screen trans storylines are increasing. However, the new horror flick Evil Dead Rise has given the representation that has still been lacking: trans morons. The latest installment in the Evil Dead Supernatural franchise has been making waves since its cinema release last week on April 21st, with fans loving the sheer amount of blood, gore, and great acting. But one role is standing out: Danny, played by trans Australian actor Morgan Davies. Danny is one of 3 siblings alongside Bridget, Gabrielle Eccles, and Cassie Neal Fisher. Their single mother, Ellie Alyssa Sutherland, ends up possessed with a little help from Danny. As an aspiring DJ, teenager Danny accidentally manages to spin a vinyl that ends up releasing demonic spirits into their apartment, effectively putting all their lives in bloody peril. In a TV and film world where so much trans representation is about characters' pain or trauma related to their identity, or heartwarming yet mushy content about overcoming adversity, people are enjoying seeing a trans actor play a role that's simply about summoning evil chaos. Plus, there's no mention of Danny being trans or cisgender. While Warner Brothers has not made a huge deal about casting a trans man in the role. I mean, come on, isn't that like this trans storyline? You come out, then you come out trans, you become a DJ, and then you summon evil spirits. That's how it goes, right?
It seems normal.
It seems normal, right? Isn't that usually the experience? No.
Is it just me, or I thought your story that you were doing tonight was written by J.K. Rowling?
No. When I first read the title, I was like, what? Where am I going? No.
Yeah.
I love this story. I love the trans representation. Gay Twitter is loving this, and I am all about embracing this show too. I'm not into the zombies, but this, I'm sold. I'm sold.
I mean, excuse me, can we correct Faye? Zombies and demons are two
separate things.
Are they in the same group of vampires?
No.
No.
Right.
No.
Damn it. Okay, we'll talk about it after the show. I'll get it straight.
Production, mute Faye, please just mute.
All right. But anyways, actually, I think that is great. I mean, in a way, that LGBTQ characters in every category, LGBTQ, is always comes with, first, our sexuality becomes the focal point of the character. Mm-hmm. The gay guy in the movie, or the gay guy in a TV series. And then, as we get to be normalized, we're just a character that happens to be gay. Mm-hmm. That's a very different story. I mean, a long time gay cinema was really about, the coming out process, the noble suffering of HIV/AIDS patients, etc., etc. Everything revolves around us, who we are, but then we suddenly become dentists or doctors, just happen to have a same-sex relationship. That's an important part of it.
And who's our favorite Marvel character? Loki. He's the bad guy that you love to root for, and he is all over the place when it comes to being on the low.
I haven't seen it. I'm going to see the movie tomorrow, and I cannot wait. And I'm really looking forward to it. But this seems completely natural to me, because if we can have a horror movie like Bros, why can't we have a trans character?
Next, let's queer up trans rights. New Texas bill could block gender-affirming care for all trans patients of all ages. Transgender Texans of all ages could have their access to transition-related medical treatment severely limited or effectively ended under a bill the Texan Senate preliminary approved Tuesday. Senate Bill 1029 would make physicians and health insurers financially liable for their patients' lifetime medical, mental health, and pharmaceutical costs resulting from complications of gender-affirming medical care, even if the providers lack the fault or criminal intent. The bill exempts such treatments for kids with medically verifiable genetic sex disorders. According to health groups, The bill would make it highly unlikely for healthcare providers offering these treatments to be able to get medical liability coverage, leaving them personally on the hook for potential medical, legal, and other costs. These financial risks could deter physicians from providing puberty blockers, hormone therapies, and gender-affirming surgeries to trans people of all ages in the state. The Senate voted 18-12 Tuesday to give the bill initial approval. It now waits another vote before it can move to the House. The Senate has also already approved Senate Bill 14, a priority bill that would ban transgender kids from receiving transition-related care, like puberty blockers and hormone therapies. A House committee has also advanced the legislation, and the majority of House members have signed on to support such a ban. Major medical groups approve of transition-related care and say it lessens higher rates of depression and suicide for trans youth.
Well,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, it's interesting to me. Don't you imagine that there's some GOP radical closet, and they all get into this closet, and then they talk among themselves, how can we be as horrible as possible? Well, let's define words of in relation to affirming care, and that every action that any medical professional ever does related to affirming care, we're going to say if you do something wrong, you're responsible. We're not going to define what wrong is. We're just saying if you do something wrong, you are responsible for it. And to ensure that we destroy you, if you do something wrong, you're responsible for the rest of that person's life. You get into this closet of this radical GOP, you have to give them at least the nod that they are diabolical and insidious in terms of how they create the laws. It's just like what we watch here in Florida. It's going to be intentionally vague, it's going to be intentionally broad, and we're going to destroy your intent to do anything without quantifying it, so therefore you won't do anything.
Well, I mean, these are the results of model legislation passed through or suggested by conservative organizations like Heritage Foundation. They all work in the same principle. Instead of the government saying that we ban things.
I think the Heritage Foundation was the dark, evil closet that I was talking about.
They all defer government power in favor of using civil litigation as an action. Think about it. All these laws are designed for someone to sue, some irritated parent sue over, how dare teacher, say gay. And here they have someone who's going to be
on your desk in school of your wife.
Exactly.
That made me feel uncomfortable.
This is out of the Republicans' playbook. I hate to say it, but we've already read this chapter. Tighten the screws, like you said, on everyone. Back a few years ago, they were said that if you were an abortion doctor, you had to have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. No other small clinic, surgical clinic has to have that. But they put it on the doctors because hospitals don't want to have abortion providers on their masthead, and they'll be picketed. So the idea was to pressure them and to pressure hospitals. So this is not new. This is unfortunately, this is a proven tactic out of their playbook.
And interesting, the only thing that overcomes it is federal judges and ultimately the Supreme Court. That's where issues like this historically over the last 50 years have been decided. Radical on either side. Let's say there's liberal radical in a state or conservative radical in a state. It's the federal court system and the federal courts, ultimately to the Supreme Court, that has moderated this. But that's why elections are so important, because we have been through a number of years where they denied Supreme Court justices under Obama. No, we're not even going to hear it, to getting Donald Trump elected and having 3 Supreme Court nominations and tilt the balance of the court in terms of the reasonableness that will either affirm or not overturn legislation like this. So we're getting what we deserve if we don't vote, right? And that's where we're at.
All right, let's queer up South Florida and Florida. Largest LGBTQ plus Memorial Day party in the country will continue despite Florida's new laws. The largest Memorial Day weekend Pride event in the country will move forward with its 2023 event on Pensacola Beach despite Florida advocacy groups like Equality Florida issuing a state travel advisory following the passage and pushing of controversial bills signed by Governor Ron DeSantis this legislative session. On April 11th, Equality Florida issued a travel advisory. The Florida Immigrants Coalition, a statewide immigrant rights coalition of 65 member organizations and over 100 allies, joined Equality Florida in issuing the warning. LGBT Memorial Weekend Pensacola is a 4-day Pride celebration that draws in crowds upwards of 200,000 from all across the U.S. For many, it's a safe haven where gay, lesbian, and transgender people can come together and outwardly express themselves without fear of ostracism. Planning for LGBT Memorial Weekend Pensacola, which is set to take place May 25th to 29th, is already in full swing with weekend passes for its nightly parties starting at $220 and individual nights ranging between $40 and $80. These ticketed events are circuit parties put on by local and traveling companies that take place in massive tents and include live DJs, intricate light shows, neon balls, glow parties, disco parties, and toga parties.
Woohoo, your favorite, Bobby.
Oh, I do love a good toga party.
I know
but
you do.
Also,
I love neon balls.
You know, I think it's great that this piece really highlights the economic impact of Pride and the LGBTQ party economy. I mean, it is a party economy.
Right, Pensacola. It's like no fun otherwise.
I mean, why are you in Pensacola?
Yeah, let's be real. But one thing, okay, a couple of things I have to say. First of all, DJ Abel and DJ Dan Slater, you folks are everywhere. People tell me all the time, my God, Faye, how much energy you have. You boys have more energy than I do for sure. All right. And second of all, one thing that I didn't see on any of that Bobby read was drag queens. So they're not going to have drag queens, right? Heartbreaking.
But, you know, this isn't really a drag queen.
Yeah,
no, I'm just saying this is not
circuit party.
It's beach party. It's gays in thongs on the beach. This has never really been a drag queen. And most of these parties aren't really permanent. A lot, you know, maybe some on the beach, but they're pop-ups or they're in hotels, things like that. But to get back to the point of what drove this story is the Equality Florida travel ban. Last night at Wilton Manor City Commission, which I was at for almost 3 hours, and almost, but not as much fun as reading Pride's bylaws, by the way.
3 hours.
3 hours, yeah, it was a lot. But they
only managed 52 minutes.
You left?
That's
you
true.
left John there?
I was
like,
I was
John, tell
there.
me if something happened.
Yeah, the story I'm going to tell tomorrow is really going to be John's stolen story. SFGN.
But the commissioners are very upset at Equality Florida for doing this. Commissioner Caputo last night said they issued an advisory that might not be safe for them, using words like harm and assault. This has been acknowledged and disappointed by businesses and many businesses that I've spoken to, but it's misleading and causing harm to tourism and local businesses. Yeah. Which, you know, he says.
I will just flatly weigh in and say travel boycotts do not work in a tourism-laden state like Florida. It's impossible. Yeah. It's just simply not possible. So as a result, to be honest with you, I agree with Commissioner Caputo. It was irresponsible to suggest that it would be a boycott under the explanation that you're not safe in the state of Florida. It is almost, it creates headlines. They accomplished, all parties that were involved in this accomplished what they wanted to do of creating headlines. But it is impossible in Florida, on a marginalized community like LGBT, to suggest you should not come to Florida because you're not safe. Every city in the state of Florida, you might be able to find some rural exceptions, but we do not hear safety issues except in very tiny minorities of the potential risk. And all of those have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. What is going on, how the law implements. But you're in a situation where you come to Florida and destinations like Visit Lauderdale or the Miami Beach Convention and Visitors Bureau are going to outspend the boycott voice 1,000 to 1. The cruise lines are going to outspend those voices 10,000 to 1. It is impossible. A travel boycott is not going to work on Florida, which means that you have to work in the system to change the attitude of the laws that are going on in Florida. Florida has a supermajority because our political advocacy, especially getting out to vote, has not been successful. So you don't try to suggest that you take the entire tourism industry down, which is what Chris Caputo.
Look, and you can't, like during COVID or even during spring break when the mayor of South Beach was telling people not to come here, right? Like you said, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
But I will say it must have taken a lot for Equality Florida to have to do this, Al. This was not something that was like, all right, let's just throw it together and put it on social media. And my third point is from people in my community, from women in my community, from trans women in my community, things are getting heightened, okay? People are getting more bashed. We are getting a lot more hate mail these days, Al. So that fear is there because the safety issues are also need to be at the forefront, and we do need to worry. We do.
Yeah. No, I think we should worry, but on the other hand, you know, a statewide boycott is essentially neglecting the fact that there are bright blue corners, bright blue dots in the state. Orlando, Disney, Broward County, Disney, Fort Lauderdale, Miami Beach. These are safe spaces. I mean, until DeSantis marches brown shirts, also known as the Florida State Guard, into the picture, those are safe spaces for us.
Yeah.
Disney. We want to boycott Disney on a day that they take on the governor of suing him in federal court, and we want to say simultaneously, don't come to Disney. Makes no sense to me. Doesn't work.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we're broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, then share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America and Faye, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and of course, Amazon Fire TV.
Fire, fuego. Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. This is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Fay What, John Hayden, Kal Gajraj, and Dr. Bobby Huen. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. And to our LGBTQ plus world, we wish you
good night.